Welcome to today's Explainer. We are jumping right into the massive, intensely data-driven world of global rice supply chains. Rice is an international staple, obviously, but today we're zeroing in on one of its most visible and, honestly, most misunderstood quality metrics, the broken percentage.
So why exactly does this broken percentage hold so much sway over how consumers perceive rice quality? It's actually a pretty simple, yet powerful psychological hook. As buyers, we immediately judge rice by its appearance. When you tear open a fresh package, you instinctively associate long, fully intact grains with purity, consistency, and a premium value. It's a visual cue that directly drives our cooking expectations, how the product is positioned at retail, and ultimately, our purchasing decisions at the checkout.
To figure out why this metric carries such psychological weight, we've got a packed agenda today. First, we'll be defining the grade, followed by the psychology of perception, and then the mechanics of breakage. After that, we'll look at global applications, zoom out for the bigger picture, and finally wrap up with misconceptions and standards.
Okay, let's dive straight into Section 1, defining the grade. What does it actually mean?
When you hear a term like a 5% broken rice grade, it's honestly just straightforward math. It literally means that a specific shipment contains exactly 95% whole, intact grains and 5% broken grains. As a primary grading criterion in international trade, it gives buyers an instant numerical metric for the physical makeup of that entire batch. But here's a good question. What makes a grain officially broken? Well, the industry standard dictates that a broken grain is any rice kernel fractured during milling or processing that measures less than 75% of the standard original whole grain length. So if a grain falls below that critical 75% threshold, it goes straight into the broken category, and that directly impacts the overall grade of the shipment.
Moving right along to Section 2, the psychology of perception, how consumers choose.
If you place these products side by side on a retail shelf, buyers are going to instantly contrast the uniform, premium look of whole grains against the fragmented, almost messy appearance of broken ones. And this judgment happens before a single pot of water is even boiled. Intact kernels just look cleaner and more perfect, which immediately casts the fragmented alternatives as somewhat lower quality in the buyer's mind.
Driving these snap judgments are four main psychological factors. First, visual uniformity signals really high processing standards. Second, we automatically associate a premium value with fewer broken grains. Third, we just have much higher cooking expectations when the grains are whole. And finally, cultural preferences play a massive role here. Think of incredible banquet dishes like biryani or pilaf, where having long, completely intact grains is absolutely vital for the final presentation.
Next up is Section 3, the mechanics of breakage. Why do these grains break in the first place?
If we track a grain through its processing journey, we quickly see that breakage isn't a sign of a defective crop. It's just an unavoidable mechanical reality. Timing during harvesting can increase brittleness, and excessive drying creates intense internal stress. Then you add in the calibration of husking equipment, the heavy friction from whitening and polishing, and the physical impacts during grading and transport. There is literal mechanical stress at every single one of these 6 steps.
Let's look at Section 4, global applications. Where do all these broken grains actually go?
Since breakage is inevitable, market requirements end up shifting dramatically across different regions. Premium markets in the UK and Middle East strictly demand intact, long-grain basmati with great aroma. Meanwhile, Europe heavily emphasizes overall appearance and consistency. North America is hyper-focused on specific retail specs and packaging. And across Africa, you'll see demand spread across multiple categories, completely varying by the specific price segment. The really crucial takeaway here is that there is absolutely no single broken percentage that is ideal for every application. In fact, higher broken grades are highly sought after for industrial uses. Food manufacturing relies heavily on them to make things like rice flour and breakfast cereals. The brewing industry uses them for fermentation, and they're also a massive staple in animal feed.
That brings us to Section 5, the bigger picture, looking beyond the breakage. This is a major realization for procurement teams. Broken percentage absolutely does not function as a standalone quality measurement.
Professional buyers evaluate it alongside a really complex matrix of other indicators. They're looking at grain length, whether it's extra long or medium. They require specific moisture content, usually hitting an export standard of 12% to 14%. They test for varietal purity, distinct aromas like 1121 Basmati or jasmine, color uniformity, and strict limits on foreign matter like stones or husks. You really have to measure the whole shebang to determine true value.
Finally, Section 6, Misconceptions and Standards. Let's clear up some stubborn myths.
Broken rice is lower quality, unsafe, and lacks nutrition. You've probably heard this, right? It is perhaps the most common, yet entirely incorrect misconception that consumers hold. People so often assume that a pristine look or a higher price tag alone dictates better, healthier rice.
But here is the reality. Broken and whole rice originate from the exact same harvest. Because of that, they share a nearly identical nutritional value. The carbohydrates, the proteins, the minerals, they are all fully present in broken grains. Literally, the only difference is the physical size of the kernel. It is definitely not waste, and it is absolutely not nutritionally inferior.
And what about the safety aspect? Well, food safety isn't determined by whether a grain is broken. It's guaranteed by a rigorous global framework of quality management certifications. We're talking about ISO 22000, HASCCP, and BRCGS, alongside GMP, halal, and kosher certifications. Add in strict phytosanitary standards, fumigation requirements, and country of origin tracking, and you have a system ensuring strict controls from the mill all the way to the shipping container.
So if you're managing a supply chain, remember this formula. True quality equals grain length plus moisture, purity, aroma, color, and broken percentage. The broken percentage is merely one single piece of a much, much larger picture. Yes, it's the most highly visible trait to the naked eye, but it has to be evaluated alongside all these other factors, never in isolation.
Knowing that broken percentage is just a visual metric, how will you evaluate the true value of your next international rice shipment? It's definitely a fascinating shift in perspective, and honestly, it leaves us wondering just how many other visual biases secretly influence our purchasing decisions in the global market. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. Keep asking the big questions, and I'll catch you next time.